All right, it is time to get my run on for today. I've got a killer tempo run plan, trying to hit 3:30 per kilometre. Although I'm going to try and negative split that. I'm trying to hit 180 SPM and really work on my form, trying to hit that midfoot and really improve my running index. That's providing, of course, I don't bonk. Hang on here. If you're new to the running world, you might be thinking, what on earth is he on about? Well, fear not, because here is our running jargon buster.
Right, let's start with tempo and threshold. These are often a staple of many runners' training programs as they're a great way for boosting your fitness. But there can be a little bit of a confusion between the difference in a tempo run and a threshold run. Well, they're often regarded as the same thing. It's basically going to be running at the pace at which you could sustain if you went all out for 60 minutes. So that's going to fall somewhere between your 10K race pace and your half marathon pace.
And then the build run, I mean, it's not too dissimilar actually. It kind of still hits the same fitness zones, but as the name suggests, you build into it. So for instance, you'd start off at a nice steady pace and build up to something like 10K pace over the course of 20 minutes. And the nice thing with this is it is a nice introduction to those tempo and threshold workouts.
Okay, so what about minutes per mile or minutes per kilometre then?
Well, this one often gets people, but in simple terms, it is your pace. How many minutes it takes you to cover a mile for minutes per mile, or how many minutes it takes you to cover a kilometre for minutes per kilometre. Personally speaking, I'm a minutes per kilometre person, and minutes per mile totally confuses me.
This then leads us on to kph, or kilometres per hour, and that's the metric you'll usually see displayed if you're running on treadmills. So 12 kph basically means you're running at 12 kilometres an hour, but do always check as to whether it's kilometres per hour or miles per hour.
Well, what about SPM?
Yep, that's a good one. SPM stands for either strides per minute or steps per minute. It's the same thing. It's basically your cadence, which is the amount of times that your legs move in a minute. And you'll expect the elites to be up at around 180 SPM. But don't have a panic if you've seen a number on your watch that is less than half of that, because some devices actually just record how many times one of your legs moves in each minute.
Okay, so who has heard of the park run? Honestly, these are amazing. In short, they're just a free 5K taking place all around the world in various towns and cities, normally starting at 9 AM every Saturday, and they have a great community feel. If you want official result and place, then you just need to register on the Park Run website, print off a barcode. Otherwise, just turn up and have fun.
Have the terms easy run, jog, steady run confuse you yet? Because they're often interchangeable and can sound a little confusing, but basically, yet again, they are pretty much the same thing. Often if someone says they're going for a jog, well, that can refer to a really easy run, but then a steady run is the same as an easy run as well. So unless it's otherwise stated, presume that a run is a run and it should be conversational and it should be easy.
Right, well, what are intervals then?
Okay, this is normally some form of quality within a run. So it's broken into intervals, or also known as reps or efforts, where it's going to be short stints of working at a high-end pace. So it could be, for example, 4 lots of 1K running at your 10K pace. And the emphasis on these intervals is very much really focusing on quality and form, and then going very easy in the recovery in between.
Aha, sort of like a fartlek session, although less structured. I mean, fartlek is actually a Swedish term meaning speed play. It involves varying your pace or speed between hard efforts and easy efforts, but rather than doing it by a set distance or time, as you would with interval training, you just go by feel, which makes it a perfect session for beginners.
Okay, hold back the laughs on this one. Bonking is actually a commonly used term in the endurance world, and it means hitting the wall. So running out of gas, out of energy, basically fully depleting your body, and you're going to struggle to go much further. It's one you certainly want to avoid.
Overpronation. Now this is something I do, and it's a type of motion that some of us make with our foot when we roll through either walking or running. Overpronation is when our ankle falls or drops inwards. Supination is when we actually roll through on the outside edge of our foot. And then neutral is when we walk or run naturally with no side-to-side movement of foot. And it's really important you know this, particularly so when you're buying a set of running shoes.
And a continuation of that is how our foot lands. And it's broken into 3 different categories. You've got forefoot runners who land on the very front of their foot. You've got midfoot runners who land on the ball of their feet. And then you have heel strikers. So that's when the heel hits the ground first. And the majority of runners tend to fall into the brackets of either being a midfoot or a heel striker.
Oh, and that negative split I was talking about earlier, well, that is when you go faster in the second half of an interval or run, which is obviously quite hard given that you're fatigued in that second half, but a great training tool.
Drills and strides are usually used ahead of a hard run session or a race, and they're a great way to making sure your body is tuned up and ready to go. So drills tend to be slower and more controlled, concentrating on reiterating that really good running form, and strides are more of an acceleration. So you're running short stretches at a much faster pace than your race pace, and a way to get your legs woken up and feeling really good ahead of the hard efforts to come.
And you'll often see athletes doing these drills and strides before a track session. Now, a track session is a session performed on an athletics track, and often we'll see athletes doing what we call a speed session on the track, a session that really focuses on that top end speed over short intervals.
And let's not forget the long run. This is another staple part of many runners' training weeks, and it's about building that aerobic endurance. So it's time spent on feet, and as a result of that, it's usually done at a very easy pace, and you'll find it'll be the longest training session of the week for runners, and in some cases it can actually exceed an hour in length.
Well, that is a lot already. Let's pick the pace up here. GPS stands for Global Positioning System. You'll find this built into a lot of watches like this one. It allows you to track things like your pace, your speed, and your distance. Heart rate, well, I probably don't need to explain this one to you. The higher it is, the harder you're working or the more strain on your body. And this can be used nicely in conjunction with your pace so you know what zone you're working in. Now, we normally use 5 zones for running, 1 being the easiest, 5 being the hardest, although these are entirely personal and differ from person to person and do change as your fitness changes. But if you're really looking to improve your performance, then keeping a track of your zones can be very useful. And we can use the zones to prevent us from overdoing it, what we call overtraining. Essentially, when we're putting too much stress on the body without enough recovery, we normally see our performance plateau and then eventually start to decline. And that's where the taper comes in. It's a form of recovery often done prior to a race, an opportunity for the body to recover from all the hard work it's done so that you're feeling fresh and ready for the race, but including some race-specific workouts so you are really firing and ready to go. PB stands for personal best, PR stands for personal record. Basically the same thing, your best time over a set distance. CR stands for course record, and something you might see pop up in Strava. What is Strava? Well, it's a popular app used for running and recording your running, and within that they have something called segments. When you pass through one of these segments when you're running, it will record your time from start to finish, and you may find yourself with a course record. And finally, DNF stands for did not finish. I don't think that needs much more explanation. And DNS sadly means did not start.
Gosh, I think that's made me realise just how many running phrases there are, and we've only scratched the surface. I can think of so many more, but hopefully that has clarified a few things, some words or phrases you might have heard that you didn't quite know what they meant. But if you've still got any questions or queries about this or other phrases you've heard, do let us know in the comment section below and we'll do our best to help out. But hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Give us a like and check out all of our social media channels and give those a follow too.